Hello, Squirrel Tribe. So let's talk about what's happening in New York, LA, and Philly right now. So according to NBC News, eight suspected terrorists with possible ISIS ties were arrested in New York, LA, and Philadelphia. Now, the men from Tajikistan, y'all know how I butcher things by accident. They came to the U.S. through the, you'll never guess where, ready? Southern border, and their criminal background checks came back clean at the time they crossed, officials familiar with the matter said, according to them. So here's what happened. According to this article, 8 men from Tajikistan with the potential ties to ISIS out of Central Asia were arrested over the weekend in New York, Philly, and LA. 3 people familiar with the matter told NBC News on Tuesday, which is today is Tuesday. The suspects had been on the FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force radar and were arrested by personnel with the U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement, better known as ICE baby. All 8 men crossed through the southern border into the United States, and their criminal background checks came back clean at the time they crossed the border, according to 2 officials familiar with the matter. At least 2 of the men crossed the border in the spring of 2023, so they've been here for over a year. And one of those men used the CBP One app created by the, you'll never guess who, Biden administration to allow migrants to book appointments to claim asylum. That's lovely. The FBI's Joint Terrorism Task Force has been aware of a potential terror threat originating in Central Europe and began monitoring these men as part of that investigation. Now, a senior U.S. official says the FBI was monitoring the group for several months and kept close tabs on their activities. While they have not been charged with terror connection or a plot yet, the FBI alerted ICE they should be arrested because of potential ties to ISIS, and they were arrested on immigration charges. Again, the sources say they are currently detained and are facing removal proceedings before an immigration judge, and they could later face terrorism-related charges. That's lovely. Now, what's interesting to me is my husband actually sent me this screenshot, and it was what prompted everything for me. So he sent me this screenshot. It says, "Remember the Boston Marathon bombing? I'm afraid something like that might happen again, or worse." This is somebody who they told the Post, the New York Post, this. And because of all the terrorism that's going on, or the terrorists that are obviously able to get into our country and able to book appointments through lovely apps that the Biden administration has created. So I saw the thing about, the Boston Marathon bombing. And my very first thought was, that's why I don't like going to large crowds of things, because I don't trust people these days. And that's unfortunate, right? But because you have so many bad people out there, even though you have so many more good, a lot of times what you remember is the bad versus the good. Just like if you have 10 people give you a compliment, but one person is a raging a-hole, unfortunately you remember the raging a-hole versus the 10 compliments, right? And it's the same thing when you see something bad happening, you see a bombing or a shooting or whatever else, you remember that, and you don't remember all of the other good things that have happened in those same cities, those same areas, involving some of the same people and stuff like that. So when I saw this with the ISIS, the terrorists, they were in New York, LA, and Philly. I've been to New York, I've been to LA, and I've been to Philadelphia, and all great things in theory. LA, there was a lot of homelessness and a lot of smog and a lot of graffiti, and it was kind of not what I expected based off of what you see on all these reality shows, right? New York, I love New York City. When we went 5 years ago and 10 years ago, we went 2 different times, and I loved it. It was gorgeous. If I were to go today, it might not be the same, because it's not the same place now. Same thing for Philly. We went to Philly maybe, how long have we been married? 16 years, so 13 years ago, went through Philly. And again, it was absolutely amazing, but that was then, this is now. And now, because of these things that are happening, I have no desire to go back through Philly. I have no desire to go back to LA, and I have no desire to go back to New York based off of things that have been happening there. Because again, you remember the bad more so than the good, right? And I don't like going to large crowds now, because there's so many people crossing borders, whether it's the southern border, whether it's through the northern border, whether it's through the sides, we got borders all around. No matter how people are getting in, or even if it's not even immigrants, what if it's just people here who have gone batshit crazy and want to do something? Because that's happened a lot before too. It's not always somebody from another country who causes or does these things. So For those of you who don't know, I looked up the Boston Marathon bombing because I was curious. I remember when it happened, and it was an absolutely terrifying thing at the time. And it was an Islamist domestic terrorist attack that took place during the annual Boston Marathon on April 15th, 2013. So just over 11 years ago. And it was two brothers planted two homemade pressure cooker bombs that detonated near the finish line of the race 14 seconds apart. 3 people were killed and hundreds injured, including 17 who lost limbs. And for a while after that, nobody wanted to go to Boston. Nobody wanted to run. Nobody wanted to join in any of these large activities because it's like, look how easy it was. It wasn't a gun. It wasn't a knife. It wasn't something you would think to look for. It was a pressure cooker, right? And those are things that most of us have in our homes. So it's a little scarier when it's everyday household items that can be used to literally wreak havoc on an entire situation or event, right? Concerts. I'm scared to take my daughter to her first concert because I'm like, there's been so many concert shootings. Think about Las Vegas, the concert shooting there. And there was something outside an Ariana Grande concert. You had tramplings at a Travis Scott concert. I think it was Travis Scott. I could be wrong there. I don't remember. I think it was Travis Scott. But there's so many scary situations out there that so many people are afraid to go to places anymore. They're like, I'm staying home. I will, DoorDash my food. I will, Spark delivery with Walmart, or they will Uber Eats or Instacart from Publix and get stuff brought to them because you keep seeing all these things happening. And it makes you worried about going out into these large crowds. I think that's another reason why, personally, a lot of malls are closing down because there have been so many incidents at malls, not outdoor shopping centers, although those happen too. But when you're in an enclosed space like a regular, good old back in the day mall, it scares people from going, and then business runs down, and then they can't pay the rent in these places. They can't keep employees, and then all these places shut down. And I worry personally, because we see stuff like this happening, that you're going to see less and less large events, and you're going to see less and less large gathering places. Now, the NBA, the NFL, MLB, those things will never go away. Not because of, non-safety issues, but because they bring in so much money that they would never allow them to go away to begin with, right? I think that we have to pay attention to everything that's going on in your city, in your state, your neighborhoods. We have to be aware of what is happening, whether it is domestic terrorists or whether it's, from outside of our border, people coming in. You have to be very vigilant when you go to these places. And so for them to say, they made it through the southern border, they passed the whatever checks, and then suddenly they're on this terrorist watch and, they're keeping an eye on them. Think about the silver lining there. At least they were able to keep an eye on them because the person used the app that the Biden administration made. Like, is this a silver lining? And was able to seek asylum, which, however you guys want to feel about that, at least they found there was a way to track them. That's all. That's the only silver lining I'm bringing out of this, is that they were able to keep eyes on them. I'm sure there are plenty more people in this country that they have no idea who they are. They don't know that they're in this country. They have no eyes on them whatsoever. And that, of course, makes me wary and paranoid. And I'm sure it does for a lot of other people, especially when you have children who are going out into the world or even to regular public schools, or they're out with their friends, 16, and driving around and going to a concert, going to a store, going to a theme park or something like that. It gets very scary because you just never know who's there and who's going to use that opportunity to do something nefarious that they shouldn't do. And it scares you. But at the end of the day, again, I say it all the time, we can't live our lives scared of what might happen, because then you're not really living. You're not really living your life. You're letting them take away your freedoms. You know what I mean? I hope that makes sense. You're letting them take away your freedom. So yes, I see that there's been 8 potential terrorists, because they're saying, potential, arrest them because they could be ISIS members here. But it doesn't mean that we should stop going out just in case there's more. And I just wanted to bring it to you in that aspect. I did look on, I'm going to put links into the pinned comment for you guys. There is a DNI.gov counterterrorism guide. And I was just curious about, I looked up terroristic attacks, lately or whatever. And this is from the year 2015. and on, no, 2015 and before, all throughout the world. And there's a lot of stuff. In France in 2015, they had 4 people killed in an attack on Delhi and Paris, and ISIL claims responsibility. You have in Kenya at least 147 killed in an attack on Garissa University. Al-Shabaab claims responsibility. Yemen in March of 2015, suicide bombers attacked 4 Shia mosques in Sinai, killing 140 and wounding more than 350. ISIL claims responsibility. ISIL, I don't know if that's how you're supposed to say it or not, but there's so many that happen throughout the entire world, and it does get overwhelming over time, but I think it's good to always know what's going on everywhere. So again, I'm going to put this into a pinned comment so you guys can see what has happened. Again, this is 2015 and before, not after. But then there was also one from travel.state.gov about terrorism, and terrorist attacks often happen without warning. Obviously, if they warned you, you'd be able to like save yourself. So that doesn't really go with saving yourself. Now it's talking about how to take steps to boost your security when traveling and things like that. And I just think it's important to know there are a lot of places right now where they don't want you to go. Haiti still being one of them. Other countries where your safety is not the top priority. So maybe it's not a good idea to go. So I'm going to just put this here. And of course, it's always the places they're saying, hotels, clubs, restaurants. Literally all the places most people want to go when they're on a vacation. Places of worship, schools, parks, shopping malls, tourism infrastructure, public transportation systems, airports. I just saw before I got on here that in Atlanta, the police were after a runaway bus in Atlanta. Of course, all I can think of is Keanu Reeves and Sandra Bullock and Speed and Dennis Hopper, I think, as the bad guy. I think about that. There's so many things to worry about that if you sit there and worry about them all the time, you're going to give yourself an ulcer. You're going to give yourself a heart attack or a stroke or something. So it is good to understand what's happening. It's good to see what's going on and to be knowledgeable about it. And as much as I want to say, don't let it stop you from living your life. I know it's not everybody's going to be able to do that. It's going to affect people differently, but I would like to implore people to always remember that you have one life to live, not the soap opera, but literally have one life to live. So live it to your best ability to, try to be happy and focus on good and not just the bad, which again, I know is hard to do, but I think that knowing that these things are going on is important, but do not let it consume your life. So that's what I have for that. I'm going to put all of these things into a pinned comment so you guys can read it. And besides that, that's all I've got. I just wanted to give you a little heads up on what was going on in the terroristic home front. So Squirrel Tribe, I love you guys immensely. I'm trying to stay out of the light here. Y'all have a fabulous rest of your day, and I will see you again tomorrow on Hump Day. Goodbye.